The medical report in my pocket says my mother isn't dying, but she's draped in funeral silk, sipping a cocktail that would kill a pancreatic patient. My brother just swung a lantern at my head, his eyes wild with panic. Now I'm standing in a wake for a woman who's perfectly healthy, and if I call her bluff, the whole family might turn on me. The glass in her hand glints like a lie. Too late to turn back. The air smells like whiskey and deception. I have 30 seconds to decide. Play along with her game, or expose the truth and risk everything. The ice in her drink clinks like a countdown. 1 sip left. The heavy vellum of the medical report crinkled against Sarah's ribs, tucked securely beneath her blazer. Evelyn's clean bill of health remained a silent grenade, ready to detonate the family's carefully curated lies. As Sarah stepped from her sedan, the scent of crushed boxwood and expensive cologne filled the night air. The humidity of the Georgia evening clung to her skin like a damp wool blanket, making every breath feel heavy and thick. She adjusted her silver locket, a nervous habit that usually preceded a boardroom presentation. But tonight, the stakes were higher than a multi-million-dollar contract. She had the proof. The lab results from the clinic in downtown Savannah were clear. Evelyn Miller had the heart of a marathon runner and the blood work of a woman 20 years her junior. There was no stage 4 cancer. There was only a stage-managed performance that had kept Sarah tethered to this estate for years. A shadow detached itself from the stone pillars of the Miller estate. Jason lunged, his breathing ragged and sour with gin. His fingers clawed at her shoulder, spinning her toward the gravel. His eyes were wide, the pupils blown out until they looked like black ink spills. "Keep your mouth shut, Sarah," he hissed, his voice cracking on her name. He didn't reach for the envelope. He swung a heavy, wrought-iron garden lantern instead. The metal groaned as it cut through the air, a low, ominous whistle that ended with a thud as Sarah ducked. The iron weight bit into the sod of the manicured lawn. Sarah shoved her palms into his chest, her heels sinking into the soft earth. The vibration of the impact rattled her teeth, the physical shock traveling up her arms. Jason stumbled, his face a mask of desperation and terror. He looked at the white corner of the document peeking from her pocket, as if it were a venomous snake. "You don't understand," Jason whimpered, his voice a frantic mumble. "If you take this inside, it kills her. You're killing her." He swung the lantern again, a clumsy, desperate arc. Sarah stepped into his space, her forearm meeting his wrist with a sharp clack. The pain was a cold jolt, but she didn't let go. She twisted his arm, forcing the heavy iron toward the ground. "She's already dead, Jason," Sarah snapped, her voice low and dangerous. "She's a ghost haunting this house, and you're the one helping her rattle the chains." She wrenched the lantern from his trembling grip and threw it into the hydrangea bushes. The leaves rustled, a dry, papery sound in the stillness. Jason collapsed onto his knees, his hands shaking so violently he had to tuck them into his armpits. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So sorry," Jason whispered to the grass. The apology loop had started. He was apologizing to the dirt, to the air, to the sister he had just tried to strike. Sarah straightened her lapels, her heart hammering against the stolen report. She didn't help him up. She couldn't. Every second she spent out here was a second Evelyn spent spinning her web for the guests inside. She turned toward the massive Greek revival pillars of the house, the white stone glowing like bone under the moonlight. The party roared inside the manor, clinking crystal and laughter echoing through the double doors. Sarah pushed through the heavy oak entrance, and the smell of jasmine and expensive wax hit her like a physical blow. The air conditioning was cranked so high it made her skin prickle. In the center of the foyer stood Evelyn. She was draped in a waterfall of black silk, her porcelain skin looking translucent under the chandelier's amber glow. She held a pashmina to her chest, her hand trembling with practiced precision. "My darling Sarah," Evelyn sighed, the sound like crushed velvet. "You've arrived. I was beginning to fear I wouldn't see you again. Wouldn't see you again." She let out a heavy, rattling breath, and the room went silent. The guests, local doctors, board members, and the ever-present Pastor Thomas, turned as one. Evelyn leaned into the arm of a velvet chair. "Everyone," she announced, her voice a fragile echo that carried to every corner of the room. "I wanted to wait for my daughter to share this. Dr. Scott has confirmed the worst. The pancreatic cells, they've spread. He gives me 6 months. Perhaps less. Perhaps less." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Pastor Thomas stepped forward, his silver cross pin catching the light. He touched the metal, a rhythmic, soothing gesture. "As my father used to say," he boomed, "the Lord gives the heaviest crosses to those with the strongest backs. We are here for you, Evelyn." Sarah stood by the door, the medical report in her pocket, feeling like it was burning a hole through her blazer. She watched her mother's eyes. They weren't the eyes of a dying woman. They were sharp, scanning the room for the exact impact of her words. Sarah noticed something else. On the mahogany side table next to Evelyn sat a tall glass filled with a bright, amber liquid. It was a sunset breeze, a cocktail famous at the local country club for its high sugar content and heavy splash of grenadine. To a real pancreatic patient, that drink would be liquid fire, a guaranteed ticket to an emergency room within the hour. Evelyn reached out and took a long, slow sip. She didn't flinch. She didn't wince. In fact, her color seemed to improve with every swallow. Sarah's grip tightened on her locket. The fraud was so blatant, so arrogant, it made her stomach churn. Evelyn wasn't just faking. She was flaunting her health in plain sight of everyone, draped in the costume of a martyr. The humidity from outside seemed to have followed Sarah in, or perhaps it was just the suffocating weight of the lies. She watched as Mr. Harrison, their neighbor from down the lane, approached Evelyn with a tray of hors d'oeuvres. He was fanning out a stack of lottery tickets in his breast pocket, the dry, papery sound of them shuffling together like a deck of cards. He looked at Sarah, then quickly averted his eyes, his greasy hair slicked back over his bald spot. "It's a tragedy," Harrison muttered, though he didn't sound tragic. He sounded rehearsed. A real tragedy. Evelyn's gaze drifted to Sarah, a cold, predatory light behind the watery facade of her eyes. "Sarah, dear," she called out, "come closer. I need to feel your hand. Feel your hand. There is so much we must discuss before the light fades." Sarah walked forward, her heels clicking on the marble floor like a countdown. She didn't reach for her mother's hand. Instead, she stood just out of reach, the silence between them stretching until it felt like a physical barrier. "I'm sure we have plenty of time, Mother," Sarah said, her voice a sharp contrast to Evelyn's drifting tones. "More than you think." Evelyn's smile didn't reach her eyes. It was a thin, brittle thing. "We shall see, darling. We shall see." The evening deepened, the air in the manor growing more oppressive as the guests began to filter into the dining room. Evelyn cornered Sarah in the drawing room, the heavy scent of lilies filling the small space. The Evelyn dirge began, a low, vibrating hum that seemed to come from the floorboards themselves. It was a wordless, mournful sound that made the hair on Sarah's neck stand up. "I've made a decision, Sarah," Evelyn said, her voice regaining a sudden, terrifying clarity. You'll need to call that firm of yours in the morning. Resign. Your place is here now. I need a full-time caregiver. Someone who knows my needs. It's your moral obligation. Your obligation. Sarah felt the walls closing in. This was the trap. Her promotion, the years of 80-hour weeks, the life she had built in the city. Evelyn wanted to swallow it all. I have a life, Mother. I have a career. You have a family. Evelyn countered, her voice dropping to a whisper that felt like a blade. And I am a dying woman. Would you have the town see you abandon me in my final hours? Think of the ledger, Sarah. Think of everything I sacrificed for you. The grocery money for that doll. The years I spent alone so you could study. The debt is high, Sarah. Very high. Sarah's thumb traced the edge of the medical report through her pocket. The debt is paid, Evelyn. It's been paid 10 times over. Before Evelyn could respond, the sky outside split open. A crack of thunder shook the house, so violent that the crystal drops on the chandelier chimed against one another. A second later, the lights flickered and died. The hum of the air conditioning cut out, replaced by the sudden, heavy drumming of rain against the floor-to-ceiling windows. The house was plunged into a thick, velvety darkness. Sarah reached for her phone, her heart racing. She needed to find Mark. She needed to show him the report now, while the chaos of the storm provided a screen. She moved through the drawing room, her hands skimming the cold silk wallpaper. Mark, she whispered. She felt a movement in the air behind her, a shift in the pressure. She reached into her blazer pocket to ensure the report was still there. Her fingers met empty fabric. Her heart skipped. She searched the other pocket. Nothing. The report was gone. "Who's there?" Sarah called out. The only answer was the rhythmic tock of the grandfather clock in the foyer. She stepped into the hallway, her pulse thundering in her ears. Someone had been close enough to her in the dark to slip the paper out. Someone in this house was a professional. She moved toward the library, thinking perhaps the thief had headed for the back of the house. The smell of rotting paper and old vanilla grew stronger as she entered the room. It was a cold, lonely scent. She navigated by the flashes of lightning that illuminated the rows of books like jagged teeth. Suddenly, a screech of wood on wood tore through the air. Sarah looked up just in time to see the massive mahogany bookshelf, the one containing the history of the family, leaning toward her. It didn't fall. It was being pushed. She threw herself to the floor, the heavy wood whistling past her head. The impact of the shelf hitting the opposite wall vibrated through the floorboards, a bone-deep thud that sent a cloud of scorched dust into the air. Sarah scrambled to her feet, her lungs burning. A shadow moved near the windows. A hooded figure, tall and broad, lunged at her. Sarah didn't scream. She didn't have the breath for it. She reached out and grabbed the first thing her hand touched, a heavy brass candlestick from the side table. Cold metal bit into her palm as she swung. The candlestick connected with the intruder's shoulder with a dull thud. The figure grunted, a sound of pure, masculine frustration. Sarah swung again, her movements sharp and practiced from years of kickboxing classes she'd taken to escape the feeling of being small. The intruder shoved her back, his hands rough and smelling of wet wool. Sarah hit the floor, her shoulder barking in pain as it struck the corner of a desk. She scrambled back, the candlestick raised like a club. "Stay back," she hissed. The figure paused, silhouetted against a flash of lightning. For a second, Sarah saw the glint of a lighter in their hand. Then, the lights flickered. Once, twice, and stayed on. The intruder wasn't a stranger. It was Mr. Harrison. He was standing by the fireplace, the stolen medical report in one hand, and a silver Zippo in the other. He looked pathetic, his suit 2 sizes too big, and his eyes darting toward the door. "Give it back, Harrison," Sarah commanded, her voice steady despite the trembling in her knees. Harrison didn't move. He flicked the lighter. The flame was a small, dancing orange tongue in the sterile light of the library. "I can't, Sarah. I owe her too much. The interest, it never stops. If I do this, she wipes the slate. I can go to Florida. I can be free." "She'll never let you go," Sarah said, stepping forward. "You're a tool to her. Once you burn that, you're useless." Harrison's hand shook. The paper caught. A small curl of black smoke rose from the corner of the vellum. Sarah lunged, but Harrison was faster. He dropped the burning report into the marble fireplace and kicked the grate shut. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the dry shuffle of lottery tickets in his pocket sounding like a death rattle. "I have to win. Just once, I have to win." Sarah stared at the flickering orange light behind the grate. Her proof was turning to ash. She looked at Harrison, seeing not a neighbor, but a prisoner who had become a jailer. "Who else?" Sarah asked, her voice hollow. "Who else is she paying?" Harrison didn't answer. He just looked at his watch and tapped the glass as if he could make the night end faster. The smell of burnt paper lingered in the hallway as Sarah retreated from the library. She felt a cold, sinking realization. She was in a house filled with people who were bought and paid for. The pastor, the neighbor, perhaps even the doctor. She needed to get out, but the front